Welcome to the Heart-Led Business Show, where compassion meets commerce and leaders lead with love. Join your host, Tom Jacobs, as he delves into the insightful conversations with visionary business leaders who defy the status quo, putting humanity first and profit second. From heartfelt strategies to inspiring stories, this podcast is your compass in the world of conscious capitalism. So buckle up and let your heart guide your business journey.
Well, welcome, marvelous listeners, to another episode of the Heart-Led Business Show. Today, we're rolling out the red carpet for a true publishing powerhouse, David Hancock. As the mastermind behind Morgan James Publishing and a best-selling author with over 20 acclaimed titles under his belt, David is reshaping the world of hybrid publishing one heartfelt book at a time. So join us as we explore his journey of heart-led entrepreneurship and the magic that happens when passion meets purpose. So David, welcome to the show.
Tom, man, I am so excited to be here. I appreciate the opportunity to share, but meet your audience. And again, just further get to know you. I've really enjoyed what you've been doing.
Oh, thank you so much for that. And I'm also equally excited for this conversation, primarily because when we were first introduced, and I think that was with Jason, previous guest on the podcast, and we spoke, and I just love what you're doing with completely different approach to publishing than the traditional publishing. I think that is completely heart-led, and I can't wait to share your business with the audience as well.
It was very intentional.
Good. But first, I always like to ask the first question, which is, what's your definition of a heart-led business?
That's a great question. And I appreciate just being a part of the listening into the podcast that you've done to kind of what to expect. For me, it's very intentional. A heart-led business is one where profits follow purpose, not the other way around. And it means putting people before transactions and value before spreadsheets. I think a heart-led business builds trust in impact first, and then lets profits be the natural byproduct. And of course, it's about leading with integrity and relationships so that our business leaves a legacy, not just a ledger.
Right. And hopefully those are connected in terms of legacy plus a nice little cash infusion as well.
It is. The more you serve others, the more you'll serve yourself. We learned that a long time ago.
Yeah. What's that famous quote by Zig Ziglar? Help enough people get what they want, you'll
That's
get
right.
what you want.
He was one of my mentors back in the 90s. I started writing books back in the day.
That's right. And I think from that previous conversation that we had, that prompted me to download an audiobook of his, like an original recording redone with his son. The way that he speaks is such a cool kind of Mad Men style, like old 1950s announcer voice.
Yes, indeed.
Anyway, let's talk about you and your business. So tell us how you've upended the publishing world.
I'll try to give the short version because it is a very good story. I was a banker back in the 90s, dumb and happy, never imagined doing anything else. I found a great niche for a college dropout. I just, for whatever reason, God had a sense of humor to getting me where I was at, but I was doing well. And then when my bosses started to lean into me like, hey, David, you're doing good. I'm like, thanks. He said, why don't you start hiring people to do what you're doing and we can build a team of you? And I'm like, I don't even know why I'm successful. It's like, but okay, we'll try. So at that point, I really started to step out and try to figure out, well, what was it that was making me successful? I knew it wasn't the $100,000 a month in marketing and advertising that the bank was doing. I knew in my heart that's not where my business was coming from, but they were doing that long before I showed up, and who am I to rock that apple cart? But I started to go out there and just venture and try to find out what was it that was making me successful, or how could I hone in on it, or what. I really didn't know. I just knew I needed to do something to help that new team he wanted me to hire to be successful.
Yeah.
So that's when I started to study under Zig Ziglar, Tom Hopkins, Bill Bacharach, Todd Duncan, John Maxwell, you name them, all the gurus from the day. Yeah. It was all amazing. I read their books. I went to their seminars. I bought their courses. I implemented, because if you don't implement, nothing happens.
Right.
And sure enough, I fine-tuned some processes. I hired a couple assistants. I made a little bit more money. I went home from work a little bit earlier, but nothing was really resonating with me. This is why I had been successful. I was just able to fine-tune it. But it wasn't until I discovered a book and got introduced to a gentleman by the name of J. Conrad Levinson, and his book was Guerrilla Marketing. And it's funny, I was looking for that kind of stuff, but for a reason I couldn't find it. It wasn't in the library when I went there. Maybe it was checked out. It wasn't at the Barnes Noble. Maybe they were sold out. And I didn't find it. But one day I came to work and somebody on my staff left a copy of Guerrilla Marketing on my desk. To this day, and I'm still friends with all of them, nobody's ever confessed to being that one person to give me that book. So I say it was divinely left on me. In fact, I still have a copy of it. I still have it. And I resonated with it. I realized I was a guerrilla and didn't know it. I was leveraging my time, my energy, my imagination to generate referrals and relationships. I was trying to help others realize their goals because I knew even back then, the more I improved that process and help others realize their goals, hopefully in a stress-free process, it would always come back to me. And it did. And that was all called guerrilla marketing. So I immersed myself in guerrilla marketing and realized this is pretty amazing. But in one of the books, Jay Levinson said, hey, if you have questions, email me. And I'm like, I'm going to email him, but he's not going to respond. Who am I? And ended up responding. We became pen pals. And then we became friends. And then I hired him as a mentor, coach. And he ultimately got me to write my first book. But he continued to secure that whole philosophy of serving others, the whole philosophy of having relationships and building a family and building ways for others to succeed around you, whether it was the clients we were serving or my staff I was trying to help. It was all about their success because almost selfishly, it's true. The more that we as individuals can help others, we'll never have to worry about our success.
Yeah.
After writing 3 books, 2 of them co-authored in the Guerrilla Marketing series with Jay, traditionally, I was really frustrated. For me, a heart-led business is one that remembers people are at the center. But when I started Morgan James, I wanted authors to feel like partners, not products. That's exactly how I felt with my publishing house. The traditional model was transactional, sign a deal, hand over your rights, hope for the best. And my heart said there had to be something else. And so I even tried self-publishing and the same thing. There's lots of wonderful things about doing it on your own and going at it on your own, but it lacked credibility, distribution, and opportunity. So we flipped the model. We put authors first. We gave them ownership of their work, involvement in the process, and built a community around their success. And that's what I think heart-led businesses look like. Leading with people, relationships, and impact. And then, of course, as I alluded before, the revenue did, in fact, follow.
That's awesome. What a great way of taking just an opportunity and just growing with it. It's something that just like fell into your lap. I mean, that is like true entrepreneurship, in my opinion, anyway.
If I had known how complicated publishing was, I probably would have never done it on purpose. But that's what we call entrepreneurial bliss.
That's awesome. Let's go into a little bit more about the traditional publishing so that we can get a good contrast between how that works versus how you're putting the authors first and leading with heart.
Yeah, absolutely. So good question. It's not necessarily that traditional publishing is bad. It just seemed to be not the right fit for we budding entrepreneurs. And I do think the late 90s, early 2000s was when we entrepreneurs really started to lean into the power of the printed book. It certainly was one of the guerrilla marketing weapons long before I discovered guerrilla marketing, but it was probably the mid 90s before we really started to take advantage of it. And we took publishing by storm. They didn't know how to handle us because we entrepreneurs don't always like giving up control. Not that we're control freaks, but we like to be able to do things with our content. We like to be able to create other products and services. We just like to be involved and certainly like to have decisions made with us than for us. But that was the way that the traditional model was. You would sell them the rights. And I say sell loosely because the way it works is a publisher will dangle some sort of advance. You've all heard of that before, but an advance is exactly what it sounds like. It's an advance payment against future earnings. So it's a loan. So they're going to loan you money into a certain point where you say, Uncle, I'll give you all my rights to my manuscript. And then they go do with it as they please. And most publishers, again, not that this is a bad thing for everybody, but entrepreneurs, it's a restriction, but most publishers just go do with it as they please. I had zero involvement in my first book. They finalized the title without including me, the cover without including me. They even added 3 chapters to my book, and I didn't know about it until I got my sample copies in the mail. And that may be a little bit extreme. They just thought they needed something. I could have written it, but it just was I had no relationship with them. And then as I'd call them up to order books or ask questions, they're like, who are you again? Not that I'm anybody at this point, but I'm starting to do pretty well. And it was just very restrictive. I had to get my PowerPoint presentations approved every time I went out and had to speak on it. They want to make sure I wasn't giving too much content away. I ended up having to pay retail price for my books because I was giving away a lot of books. And they said, you bought as much as we're going to allow you to buy at a discount, so you got to pay retail.
Oh my gosh.
And it was just frustrating. Somehow, all my royalties got paid at a lower rate because they were sold at non-standard discounts. Because the typical publishing may say, hey, we're going to pay you 10, 12% or whatever if it sells here, there, or the other. But there's a little tiny clause on page 33 that said, oh, by the way, if it sells at a non-standard discount, we're going to pay you 5% or less or something like that. Well, imagine that. Most of my books got sold at a non-standard discount. How did that happen? The publishers are in control of that. So that's how that happened. But after my third book, the last two were co-authored with Jay. There's a fun side story there, but I went to Jay and just said, hey, they want me to do another book and I don't like them. They're like, what else do I have to say? But I had moved to the wholesale side of banking, so I could respin the book. My mentor was still becoming my best friend. And I'm like, I don't want to do it. But he said, we'll figure it out. And I said, well, not unless you co-author it with me. And he said, yes. So after those books, I was out of my 3-book deal with the publisher. I sold 40,000 copies of my second book to the bank I worked for. So we were doing really well.
Oh, nice.
So then I went self-published thinking, hey, what do I need a publisher for? I went out there and self-published them, loved them. The covers were mine. The content was mine. I was very proud. There's pros and cons to everything. Very limited credibility with me saying I'm wonderful, though I had a good track record with being a best-selling author, but I couldn't get media to interview me. I couldn't get them to bookstores because even today, most bookstores won't carry a self-published book. And the humbling thing was I filled up my garage with books, assuming I would be able to sell the number of books that I had sold before, but could not without the same level of distribution. And the termites ate them up faster than I can sell them, which frustrated me, but also my bride, because I had to push her car out of the garage to make room for them.
Yeah, but she's not very happy.
Yeah. I went back to Jay and said, man, there's got to be a better way. And he was very loving, very gracious, and got me to put an outline together for what I thought, didn't know this at the time, what a heart-led business could look like. What should a relationship between entrepreneur and publisher look like? And he alluded to me that he would take it to Houghton Mifflin. Now, Houghton Mifflin is an amazing old-school publisher. They originally published Guerrilla Marketing. They originally published Mark Twain. And he had a great relationship with them. And he's like, maybe I'll take it to them and maybe they'll create an imprint to support entrepreneurs. So I pour my heart into this outline, layered it with guerrilla marketing, a lot of values-based selling, serving others to help realize your goals, and just flexibility. Authors retain control of their ownership, make decisions. Well, I just kind of poured it in there. I present it to Jay like, ta-da, take this, so now we'll have a place to publish. And he loved it and laughed. And any good mentor would do, he said, now go do it. I laughed and cried at the same time.
Oh, I bet.
But I was obedient and decided to launch it, named it after my kids. Morgan just had enough of God's favor and a lot of friends who gave us a little bit of help, and we just had to earn the rest.
Yeah. Well, certainly you have. How many books now are published under House?
We probably have just under 6,000 titles in almost 24 years. We do about 150 to 200 a year, each one hand-selected. But as you're probably not surprised, 80% of our decision is the author. Who are they? Yeah. What are they doing and why? And do we think we can help them realize their goals? And then the book, certainly important, but you can't fix an author that just doesn't care about their audience. So our authors need to be heart-led as well. And that's kind of what we're doing now.
Oh, that's beautiful. And, it's interesting. I've self-published 2 books and co-authored like 2 other books. I don't have that experience of going to a publishing house. But I can imagine how frustrating that is to not be able to put up your own website, to use some chapters as a lead magnet, to be able to do all the stuff. So tell us a little bit more about transition, because I always like to hear transformation stories from the banking, which is can be very much profit-led. And going from that environment to entrepreneurial, your own thing, and being a heart-led. What was the mindset shift that you had to go through personally to be successful in a new venture?
Actually, it was pretty easy. I was a mortgage banker. I was a loan officer. Then I ran my own little loan officer shop. So for us, it was still about serving others, helping others realize their goals, and adding value and building rapport and relationships, and leave an impact and hopefully get your referrals. And as a loan officer, I was 100% commission. Though I didn't have any entrepreneurial ventures prior to that, I knew that if I didn't hustle, I wasn't going to get paid. So I treated it as if it were my own business. Yeah. And then just grew it from there. So when the transition came, it was an easy transition, but it was slow. I became very passionate about the power of the book. I literally doubled my income after the book coming out, and I didn't raise my fees. Just nobody negotiated with me anymore. The power of the book gave me the authority for people to say, hey, this guy knows what he's talking about. I can trust him. And of course, I demonstrated that trust by being consistent and adding value and creating valuable relationships. It started to overtake me with just how powerful the book was. So as I grew in my mortgage banking career, I ended up getting promoted to the wholesale side, which means that my client was now the old me, the old loan officers or those mortgage brokerage shops that they would get money from me. So I spent all my time trying to help them grow their business the way that I grew my business. And one of my secret weapons is, oh my gosh, you need to write a book. But I had really just started to lean, just like Jay. And he said that I would be able to get clients that would never give me the time of day, have them start coming out of the woodwork, start doing business with me because of the power of the book, the authority that the book gives. I was on television, radio, or print on a weekly basis because I was the only local knucklehead who wrote a book about banking. And in the 90s, something was always happening in banking. And it was crazy. So I started to teach that to my clients. You got to guerrilla market your business. You got to serve. You got to help others, all the things we've talked about. But to really stand out, man, you need to do a book because that's what I did. And they all had bought my books. So I'm just trying to just teach them. And I got very, very sidetracked. I was probably working 2-ish hours a day in my banking business, which was, I had clients across the country, but my local part was I was just taking my best friends to lunch every day.
Yeah, nice.
Then I would spend 20 hours a day helping authors or helping entrepreneur-minded people in the banking space to do what I did, write a book. So I'd compel them to write a book. I'd help them flesh out their ideas. I'd connect them with friends that I'd made in the space, whether they're my agent or publishers or helping some go out and self-publishing, which is absolutely better than doing nothing at all. When I finally had those conversations with Jay about the publishing world being broken, it was because all the people that I'd helped and met that were doing traditional were having the same struggles that I had. All the people that I had met that doing the self-publishing side were doing really well, but they were having the same frustrations that most of the self-published authors had: credibility, distribution, and opportunity. And just when we were compelled to do it, we just said, hey, let's do it. I didn't quit my day job right away. It was 2 years later before I realized I need to quit this day job because I'm having more fun over here. Now, granted, I was getting paid still stupid money, which is hard to walk away from, but just the passion, the relationships I was building, and the fun that we were having, creating something brand new from scratch. We didn't hire anybody from the publishing world or space for years after we started because I wanted to do it the right way.
Well, of course.
But when I quit the day job as a banker, I went full on publisher and just continued to serve. And it's just been so amazing.
It was a great answer. A lot of heart-led business owners struggle with making a profit and still being heart-led. How do you kind of balance those two for yourself and your business?
Well, let me just confess, it is a challenge sometimes when you need to close that next deal. But the real challenge is the more that you demonstrate that you need it, the less credibility, approachability, trustability that you have with your clients. So it is an exercise in patience, certainly is an exercise in faith, but don't ever pray for patience because God will give you reasons to be patient. You just got to lean into it. You just have to spend as much time as you can figuring out what your client needs, how you can help them realize their goals, how you can serve them, and the profit will come. You just have to trust and lean into it, and it will come back on you. And it will come back quicker than you think if you just keep that mindset. Sometimes you may have to raise your fees, so the ones you're closing, but if you're adding value, you're serving others, and you're trustworthy, and you're getting referrals, you deserve it, and it will be not unexpected. So it's a little blend of patience, persistence, and understanding that the lowest price isn't always best, especially for the value that you've got. So that's my short answer.
Yeah, nice. And what kind of like pleasant surprises have come out of being heart-led that you never would have expected?
I never would have expected that all of my best friends today, or whatever, Morgan James authors. I've always had great friends since kindergarten. Now, almost 25 years into this, I go back and I look at who am I spending the most time with? Where is my joy? Who do I travel to go see? It's our authors who end up becoming my best friends. And that was definitely unexpected, but
Yeah.
oh my gosh. Jay demonstrated that with me, and we became best friends. I met him in the mid-90s. He got me to write my book. We co-authored 2 books together. And I didn't meet him in person until after I started the publishing house.
Oh, wow.
It was all via phone, no Zoom. Phone and email was our entire relationship.
That's amazing. You talk about the distribution and the opportunity that comes from working with a publishing house. Why is that versus the self-publishing? What's the process, one versus the other?
The distribution is pretty significant. Now, we all think Amazon is amazing and huge, but they're not the end all, especially for the last 8 years or so. They've really come under fire. They're not the favorite choice to go to anymore. but people do like options. And for us, it was always about discoverability, being discovered by somebody in an Alaskan bookstore who never ever went on the internet to find, or may have found you on the internet, who discovered you because they wandered the aisle in the bookstore when they were in need for some sort of content. So I love the distribution side of publishing because it opened up our circle of influence to virtually unlimited. Certainly with social media, you can reach just about anybody on the planet, but those algorithms are limited and not everybody is on social media. Not everybody's looking for business on there. So finding that right CEO who picks it up at the airport bookstore or just wanders into the bookstore has been significant. Fast forward to today, Amazon's our largest client, but they're a very small percentage compared to our overall. The bulk of our sales are coming from brick and mortar, which means generally they're either were referred to go buy the book from a friend or they discovered it. And one cool thing about having that brick and mortar distribution is Amazon pays the least. The brick and mortar stores pay the most. So we end up making more money by serving the client that's wandering down through the bookstore aisle. But that kind of credibility is significant, especially with media. Their producers require that the people that they interview for media, whether it's radio or television or print, generally they have to be vested or vetted, and they don't have time. So they let publishers do the vetting for them. And I learned that the hard way because I was getting picked up by media on a weekly basis. But when I started to self-publish, they just didn't have time to vet me in the content that I was talking about. And I couldn't get those interviews. They would talk to me all day long about my traditionally published books, but not my other ones. And then that bookstore distribution, just not being able to get in the stores on the self-published side was very limiting. Because even back the early days of Amazon, obviously when I started my books, but having the books in the brick and mortar stores was very powerful.
Oh, yeah. But when I published my first book, and one of the guys that we were kind of in a mastermind group that was working on this together. We're all doing our own books. And one person said, hey, I have an idea. Let's reverse steal our books. And I was like, what does that mean? He said, take your book into Barnes and Noble and buy it. So when they scan it, it tells the register, the inventory system that they're out of that book now and they're going to order it. I was like, that's not going to work. Yeah. That was a clever little concept though. But instead, just take a box of books and put it in the bookstore.
But now when they scan it, if it's not in their system, they'll just say, go ahead and take the book home. So a wives' tale, but a great way to get noticed. So I'm not saying don't do it. But the other thing, if you take a book to a bookstore and put it on their shelf, generally within 30 minutes, they'll discover it and get rid of it.
Okay.
Until recently, publishers paid for premium placement. So every time somebody drops a book in a bookstore, they may put it cover out. And that's something that you used to really police. So if you go, even if your book is in the store, you go in there and turn the book cover out, walk back and just watch it. Within 30 minutes, they'll put it back. So that's definitely a very cherished space. Under Barnes' new ownership, they don't allow publishers to buy that kind of placement. They let the local managers curate their own promotions, and we can't even buy them from the local stores or the local manager. But still, they do watch their shelves. So if a book shows up where it's not supposed to be, or if a book turns cover out like it's not supposed to be, they'll fix it.
That's interesting. It's just the more I learn about the whole publishing, and thank you for sharing all that stuff. I'm like, I'm so glad I self-published that first part. Yeah. I love your model though, in terms of putting the author first and giving them all the resources to be successful without the restraints that traditional gives. So thank you for doing that. That's amazing.
Absolutely. One of Jay and I's most famous books was called Guerrilla Marketing for Writers. And it was just really to help the authors understand what no publisher is going to teach them. Ultimately, no matter who publishes a book, whether some random house or self-published or even somebody like Morgan James, though we do more than most publishers, it really is going to fall on the author's shoulders to get books out. We know how to sell our widgets or create value in other ways, but selling books is a very specific thing. And what we've learned, it's really hard to sell a book. Nobody wants to buy another book. So you lean into the message, you lean in how it serves others, you lean into the relationships and give access and demonstrate authority, then they trust you, then they'll buy the book and talk about it. But we have to teach them, that it's on you. So you've got to go do these things. And there's over 100 different ways to market and sell a book without wasting time or money. You just need to know about it. So it's a process.
Yeah. No, that's great. And I'm sure your whole program kind of streamlines that whole process. The learning process shortens the learning curve.
Yeah, we start early on with our authors. Hopefully, again, the goal is to have a great relationship with them and serve them. But we start talking about, the best time to start marketing your product, book in this case, is the moment you decide to create it. Now, notice I didn't say the best time to start selling your book is the moment you decide to create it, because you've got to demonstrate authority. You need to lean into it. People need to see you as the right person, saying the right thing at the right time. And you need to earn the right to ultimately say, hey, go pre-order my book, because pre-orders matter. And then you've earned it. They've expected it. They're like, when and where and how can I support you? And then you give them a path to, and then they will.
That's great. But I love processes too. Speaks to my heart.
Awesome.
Yeah. This has been just a great conversation, David. And thank you so much for being on the show. But before we kind of sign off here, how can people learn more about you and Morgan James Publishing?
Well, I appreciate the opportunity. It certainly wasn't my goal for being on the show. I really wanted to serve you and to get to know you, but serve your audience in however I can. You can discover me at morganjamespublishing.com. I'm on all social medias at David Hancock. Happy to connect. Anything I can do to serve you, I'd be honored to. In fact, I could probably give, if it's okay, I could give two gifts to your audience.
Absolutely.
One, since we talked a whole bunch about books, one of our best-selling books is a book called Guerrilla Marketing for Writers. Now, I have a third edition coming out in March, but if you want to get this one, just go to G, as in Guerrilla, marketingforwriters.com, and you can download a free copy of this, and I want you to use it and leverage it and grow your author business without wasting time and without wasting money. And then in March, I've got the Babylon Blueprint for Authors, which is in essence the third edition of Guerrilla Marketing because Jay has passed away years ago. So it was tough to do it under that brand. But the other gift is because you've extended so much generosity to me to introduce me to your audience, and I'm so grateful. I want to give back. And one of my Wall Street Journal bestselling books is called Performance Driven Giving, which is all about unleashing the power of generosity in your life to grow your business. And you can get a copy of this as well at your favorite bookstore, but go to Performance Driven Gift, my super secret website, performancedrivengift.com, and you can download it for free. You can put it in your Kindle, your Kobo, your Nook, or whatever device you have. No obligation to read it, but if you read it, tell all your friends. If you hate it, we never had this conversation.
Exactly. Yeah, I always tell people, if you have a compliment, tell 10 of your friends. If you have a complaint, tell me personally.
Right.
Exactly.
That's the nature of
awesome.
business.
Well, David, again, thank you so much for spending your time with us and sharing your wisdom with the audience. I really appreciate you.
It's my privilege. Thank you.
You're very welcome. And thank you, audience, for tuning in today. We really appreciate you tuning in on YouTube or on Spotify or Apple, whichever you choose for your podcast. But make sure you're checking out what David's doing. We're going to put all those links and all the books down in the show notes. So make sure you're checking that out. And while you're down there, why don't you just give the show a rating and review? It helps spread the word about the Heart-Led Business Show and helps more people realize that they can have a heart and lead with heart and still make a profit.
Amen.
So until next time, lead with your heart.
You've been listening to the Heart-Led Business Show, hosted by Tom Jacobs. Join us next time for another inspiring journey into the heart of business.